Hey, shalom, shalom, mishpocha. Welcome to another edition of Ray Bash's Ramblings. I'm your host, Rabbi Yehuda Ben Shomer, and today I wanted to talk to you about what swimming has in common with Torah. Kind of bizarre, kind of a mismatch. How do you come to that conclusion, Rabbi? What are you getting at? Well, there are some, if you've watched my videos regarding so why the Torah and from bondage to bondage, this is sort of like the third installment to that series. I mentioned within those two videos that there are some commands of Torah that have been suspended or that have been put on hold that no longer apply to us today because, number one, most of us do not live in Israel. We're in the diaspora. We're in exile. Two, there is no standing temple with no working Levitical priesthood there. So such laws pertaining to the temple and sacrifices, etc., have not been done away with, but they've been temporarily suspended and put on hold. Think of it like this. If you have a public pool in your community, if you go into the public pool area, usually close to the swimming pool on the wall somewhere is a big placard with all the rules that govern the swimming pool. No foul language, no horseplay, no running, no diving in the shallow end, things of this nature. So, if the pool was devoid of water, does that mean that those laws do not apply? That those laws that are on the swimming pool have been done away with? No, it means that those rules governing and guarding the swimming pool have temporarily been suspended. Why? Because a prerequisite for those rules to be enforced is absent. There's no water. You can't swim in a swimming pool with no water, just like you cannot sacrifice at the Temple Mount when there's no temple and there's no Levitical priesthood to be able to take your sacrifices. The laws regarding the temple and the sacrifices have not been done away with, but been temporarily suspended and put on hold until the time that the temple is rebuilt and the Levitical priesthood is reestablished. Then those laws pertaining to the temple and sacrifices will be reinstated. And then when we make Aliyah, return back to Israel to live, we'll be able to go and sacrifice at the temple. So there are certain laws, certain commands within the 613 commandments that we cannot fulfill today because we do not live in the land of Israel and because the temple currently does not stand and there is no active working Levitical priesthood in a temple. And it's like I said, it's very similar to the rules at a local community swimming pool. Those rules are still applicable. They still apply. They're still to be enforced. They have not been done away with. They've just been temporarily suspended and put on hold because you cannot swim in a swimming pool without water. Therefore, those laws cannot be obeyed or enforced if there's no water in the swimming pool. Those laws still stand. They still remain. They've just been temporarily put on hold and suspended until somebody comes along with a water hose, fills up the pool with water, and fixes it with the chlorine and the chemicals to make it swimmable. Same thing regarding many of the laws in the Torah, that once the temple is rebuilt, just as once the water returns to the swimming pool, once the temple is rebuilt, then those laws will be put back in place, be taken off the shelf, and be enforced once again, and we'll be able to follow them. They have not been done away with. They have not been suspended. You're saying, well, what about Yeshua's death? What about Yeshua's death on the cross? Didn't that do away? Wasn't that the ultimate sacrifice? Yes, it was the ultimate sacrifice. Yes, it is the sacrifice that atones for our sins. But it doesn't do away with the sacrifices because, as Hebrews says, the blood of bulls and goats cannot atone. So what was the sacrifices for? What's the point? Many see if the sacrifices are reinstituted, they see that as a slap in the face of God's grace and Yeshua's redemptive work. But nothing can be further from the truth. If you look at the timeline as a straight line, you put the cross right in the middle, and you have, before the cross, you have the sacrifices. They were instituted by God, put in place in the Torah by God, for two reasons: as a physical object lesson of the consequences of our sin, that we need atonement, that we need a substitution, we need to make amends for our sins. And so it prophesied, and it was a physical object lesson to point to that cross, to point to the Redeemer that's coming. Secondly, God gave all the tribes but one inheritance in the land of Israel. The only one that did not have any inheritance in the land was the tribe of Levi. God said that your work in the temple, your priesthood, your sacrifices unto me are your inheritance. Did you know that that many of the sacrifices that were prescribed in the Torah, that the priests got a portion of that for themselves to eat and to share with his family and the other Levites? That was their income. That was their livelihood. Without the sacrifices, the Levites would starve to death and be non-existent. Now they've had to assimilate into the community and take regular jobs and things like that, but their sacrificial role is still held in honor in synagogues today, because the rabbis and sages of blessed memory, peace be upon them, said that until the temple is rebuilt, that our prayers and our Torah study are equivalent to our sacrifices. So when the Torah is read, the Levites are the ones who say the blessing over the Torah and have the privilege of carrying the Torah scroll and unrolling it and rolling it and putting it back in the ark, etc. So their role is still remembered until the temple is rebuilt. So now, what about after the cross? A lot of people say, oh, the sacrifices are done away with because Yeshua is the ultimate sacrifice. No, it's the Levites still have that promise of inheritance. If the sacrifices have been done away with, we would be calling God a liar, and God would be reneging on his promise of inheritance to the Levites, because they have no land inheritance. Their service unto God is their inheritance. The sacrifices are their inheritance. It's their right. So after the cross, we continue. Once the temple's rebuilt, we will reinstitute the sacrifices, and those sacrifices don't serve as an atonement for our sins, but that physical object lesson that points back to the cross, to the Messiah that did come to accomplish that atonement, that atoning work. And it also doubles as the inheritance and the income and the livelihood for the Levites. So I just wanted to cover some of these obscure laws that many may have questions about and don't understand. If the Torah is still for today, how come we still don't sacrifice? Well, those are the reasons that we don't sacrifice, because at the time when Solomon dedicated the temple, God and Solomon made a covenant, and God said, no other place are you allowed to sacrifice any longer except for the place where I put my name, at this temple mount. That's the only place you're allowed to sacrifice. So that's why we don't sacrifice everywhere else today, because we can only sacrifice at the temple, and therefore those laws have temporarily been suspended and put on hold simply because the Muslims have control of the Temple Mount. We no longer have a standing temple or altar or a working Levitical priesthood to take our sacrifices to. So, but that's changing. That's going to change. That time's coming to an end. Mashiach's going to come. The temple's going to be rebuilt, and we're going to sacrifice once again. The book of Zechariah prophesies that even the Gentiles during the Feast of Sukkot will be required to come to Jerusalem, and sacrifice unto God, or they won't have any crops for the next year. The rain and the growth of the crops are dependent on their obedience to fulfill the Torah. Gentiles now, not just Jews, but Gentiles, to fulfill the Torah and bring the sacrifice to the temple when the third temple is rebuilt. So thanks for watching. Shalom and Shavua Tov. Bye-bye.